Shabbat Shalom, YouTube. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom. I have a question. Is the Apostle John still alive? I know that sounds crazy. It does. But let's keep in context. I should have saved this first. Let's keep in context what Jesus was constantly saying. There are some here who shall not taste death until they see the Son of Man come again with his glory. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially he repeated that multiple times. That there are some there who will not die until Christ returns. Okay? Okay. Let's start off with Revelation chapter 1, verse 9. So he's exiled on the island of Patmos. I, John, who am also your brother and companion in tribulation, and in the kingdom and patience of Jesus Christ, was in the isle that is called Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. So he was in exile on Patmos because he was preaching. Which begs the question, why would they leave him on an island, right? All the other disciples were getting killed because they were a threat. What makes John so special that instead of killing him, they throw him off on an island somewhere? We'll get to that. These are depictions of stories that were known at least as early as 200 AD by Tertullian, who was he was a prolific writer in the early Christian movement. Very, very well-known writer in the early Christian movement. So he would have known what's true and what's false. And this story was only like 100 years before him. You know, we know more or less what happened during the Civil War. You couldn't say, oh, aliens came in the Civil War and there were flying stars and UFOs. Like, you couldn't make something extravagant like that. So we know more or less what happened 150 years ago. So, what did he say? He said that John the Apostle was taken to a Colosseum and they dipped him in boiling oil and nothing happened to him. And this sounds crazy until you remember the history of Israel. The story of Daniel's 3 friends in the furnace. Nebuchadnezzar was so angry because they wouldn't bow down to the golden statue. And he said, what if I throw you into the oven? Who will save you then? Will your God save you? And they said, our God can save us, and we will not bow down to you. And even if he chooses not to save us, we will still not bow down. So he was so enraged, he threw them into the oven. And what happened? Nothing. Nothing happened to them, except that there were 4 men in the oven. And one, according to Nebuchadnezzar, looked like the Son of God. The angel of the Lord was in there. Nebuchadnezzar said, truly your God is the God of gods. He sent his angel to protect you. Well, same thing happened with John. John's tomb is thought to be located in the former Basilica of St. John at Selçuk, a small town in the vicinity of Ephesus. The opening of the tomb during Constantine the Great's reign yielded no bones, giving rise to the belief that his body was assumed into heaven. Another fact that continues to advance the belief of St. John's assumption into heaven is the fact that St. John, along with Mary, the mother of Jesus, and St. Joseph, are among a few saints who left no bodily relics, apparently. But I don't know too much about Mary and Joseph. I think that their bodies probably left something behind. But we never found a corpse for John. We don't know when he died. We don't know where he died. We've never found a body. And we know he wasn't martyred. Peter was martyred. James was martyred. They were all martyred. Why would they not kill John? It is traditionally believed that John was the youngest of the apostles and survived all of them. He is said to have lived to an old age, dying of natural causes at Ephesus sometime after AD 98, during the reign of Trajan, thus becoming the only apostle who did not die as a martyr. Why is this possible? Why would they not kill John? Especially if Jesus promised him that he would not die in the book of John. All they had to do was bring John's body and lay it out before everybody and say, this is John, we killed him, Jesus' promise didn't come true. There's his corpse, this is John who recognizes it. They couldn't do that. An alternative account of John's death, ascribed by later Christian writers to the early 2nd century bishop Papias of Hierapolis, claims that he was slain by the Jews. Most Johannine scholars doubt the reliability of its ascription to Papias, but a minority, including these guys, maintain that these references to Papias are credible. Zahn argues that this reference is actually to John the Baptist. So we already know they opened the tomb, and they found nothing. So according to Tertullian and the Prescription of Heretics, John was banished, presumably to Patmos, after being plunged into boiling oil in Rome and suffering nothing from it. It is said that all in the audience of the Colosseum were converted to Christianity upon witnessing this miracle. This event would have occurred in the late 1st century during the reign of the Emperor Domitian, who was known for his persecution of Christians. When John was aged, he trained Polycarp, who later became Bishop of Smyrna, and he was successfully burned in the Colosseum. This was important because Polycarp was able to carry John's message to future generations. Polycarp taught Irenaeus, passing on to him stories about John. Similarly, Ignatius of Antioch was a student of John. In Against Heresies, Irenaeus relates how Polycarp told a story of John, the disciple of the Lord, going to bathe in Ephesus and perceiving Cerinthius. Okay, this is unrelated. So, he was born around 6 AD in Bethsaida, Galilee, and he died around 100 AD, aged, place unknown. They don't know where he died. All the other disciples were martyred. They crucified Peter upside down. Didn't Herod stab James, cut his head off? Like, every single one of the disciples except for John was brutally killed. What happened with John? Did he flee? Did he hide in some other country? No, he was still preaching. The Johannine community was very strong. John, I believe, was the greatest. That's why he was the Jesus' most beloved disciple. He was the one that Jesus gave what I believe to be immortality to. I think John is still alive somewhere. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's in a cave praying. I don't know if he's networked into some underground church somewhere. I don't know where John is, but I think John's alive. When Jesus promised that he would tarry until the second coming, when Jesus said, there are some here who will not taste death until they see the second coming of the Son of Man. I'm paraphrasing, but he meant it. John is alive somewhere. What is the origin of the story of the Apostle John in boiling oil? The earliest extant reference to John being thrown in boiling oil is from Tertullian around 200 AD. His casual mention of the event suggests that it was a widely known story during his day, although it is hard to say by what amount of time the story predates Tertullian. If the story has any basis in fact, it is usually assumed to have taken place in the late in the reign of Domitian around 81 to 96 AD. The only book of the New Testament that directly covers church history, the Acts of the Apostles, ends around 61 AD. Assuming Johannine authorship of 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John, all three would predate the boiling incident. The remaining Johannine literature, the Gospel of John and Revelation, would not be expected to mention it either. Thus, we would not expect the story to be mentioned in the Bible, even if it is true. Well, find me a body and I'll believe it's not true. All you had to do is present a body and discredit this. This is John chapter 21. This is the last chapter of the Gospels. So Jesus is risen. He's revealed himself to the disciples a few times. Seems like he's shape-shifting to try to get a response out of them. First time he sees them on the, I think they're walking and his face is covered and they don't recognize him. And then he preaches about the Torah, he preaches about the prophets. And then when they realize it's him, he disappears from their presence. Next time, I believe, is when he tells Thomas, he says, look at my, here's the side, want to put your hand inside of where the hole, basically he said, look, I am risen. Look at the wounds. There's your evidence. Obviously he said it more gracefully, but I'm paraphrasing. I'm not Jesus. I don't claim to be Jesus. And yeah, he's just something special. He is the greatest thing to ever happen to humanity. And let's get into this. John 21. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and on this wise he showed himself. There were together Simon Peter and Thomas called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and the two other of his disciples. Simon Peter said unto them, I go fishing. And they said unto him, we also go with you. They went forth and entered into a ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning was now come, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. And Jesus said unto them, children, have you any meat? They answered him, no. And he said unto them, cast the net on the right side of the ship, and you shall find. They cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw it in for the multitude of fishes. Therefore the disciple whom Jesus loved, which is John. We know this is John. Why is this John? Because John was the only one that was given immortality, or something very similar to it. The disciple whom Jesus loved said unto Peter, it is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard it was the Lord, he girt his fisher's coat unto him, for he was naked, and he did cast himself into the sea. And the other disciples came in a little ship, for they were not far from the land, but it was about 200 cubits, which is about 200 cubits, it's about 300 feet, dragging the net with fishes. As soon as they were come to the land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid thereon, and bread. Jesus said unto them, Bring of the fish which you have now caught. Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of great fishes, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. Jesus said unto them, Come and dine. And none of the disciples dared ask him, Who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus then came and took bread and gave it to them, and the fish likewise. This is the third time that Jesus showed himself to the disciples. After that, he was risen from the dead. So when they had dined, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me more than these? And he said unto him, Yea, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said unto him, Feed my lambs. Now this is very important because Peter was the leader of the movement, but I don't think he was a very good leader. So Jesus reminding him, hey, you got to be humble. You got to feed the sheep. You got to take care of my flock. You're the one who's the shepherd now. You got to be a good shepherd. You got to do what follow the example. I washed your feet, wash other people's feet. Pray, Peter. Don't fall into temptation. Stay awake. You have to pray, Peter. 1 hour. I ask you for 1 hour. Stay awake and pray for strength that you don't fall into temptation. He kept falling asleep. What did Jesus say? Sleep now and take your rest. It is enough. The Son of Man is now to be betrayed. And what happened to Peter? Peter was deceived. Peter saw a vision in Acts chapter 10. I don't think it was God telling him that you can break the Torah. I think he was tempted by Satan. I think Satan came and was like, Peter, it's okay. You can transgress the law of Moses. What I have made clean, don't call it unclean. And then Peter's like, I'm not supposed to. Legally, the law of Moses forbids me from receiving a Gentile in my house, but I had a vision, and the vision says it's okay now. So Peter was tempted. He also didn't want to, he wanted to kind of like a buffer between him and the others. He was like, it's not meet for us to wait tables, We need somebody else to administer the small things. We should, basically Peter was an elitist. He was the leader of the Christian movement, but he was an elitist. But here Jesus is saying, feed my lambs. So let's get back to that. Yea, Lord, you know that I love you. He said unto him, feed my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me? Do you love me? And he said, Yea, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said, feed my sheep. He said unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he said unto him the third time, do you love me? And he said unto him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said unto him, feed my sheep. He denied him 3 times, and now he was told, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. Did he feed the sheep? I don't think he did a good job. I think Peter was a little crazy. Yeah, Peter was like, he's a little crazy. Oh, we're fighting now? All right. He takes his sword off, tries to kill a man, but apparently he missed. An angel probably redirected his sword and only chopped off his ear. But yeah, Peter was a little psychotic. Peter was a little crazy, a little stupid. I'm sorry, Catholics. He was a little stupid. We're all a little stupid, aren't we? There's only one person who was perfect, Jesus. Even Moses messed up. Moses struck the rock the second time. He was told to speak to the rock, and for disobeying a direct commandment from God, he wasn't allowed to go into the promised land. What did Peter do? Peter looked down when he was walking on water. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Peter couldn't stay awake to pray for 1 hour for strength. What else did Peter do? Peter wasn't that intelligent. He was a man, just like the rest of us. And that's why the Torah is so important. If we understand human fallibility and we dedicate ourselves to the Torah, it makes it a lot harder for us to fall into temptation. But Peter was lukewarm about the Torah. Acts chapter 15 with the Gentile converts. Oh, the Torah is a burden. Why would we put this burden on the Gentiles? Let's just give them a watered-down version of the Torah, and if they want to study the Torah, they can go to a synagogue. Don't strangle meat. Don't drink blood, don't fornicate, and don't eat food sacrificed to idols. Well, because Peter was weak on the Torah, now a bunch of Christian sects are like, oh, Hail Mary, and oh, let's bow down to the statues of the saints, and let's pray for forgiveness for Mary. It's like, all of this is paganism dressed up behind Christianity. This is what we must understand. The Torah and the Gospels is the only path to salvation. Everything else in the Bible is context. But anything that violates the Torah is not from God. Christ gave the Torah to Moses face to face on Mount Horeb. How dare anybody say that the Torah is no longer valid? So, do you know, Jesus said unto him, feed my sheep. Verily, verily, I say unto you, when you were young, you girded yourself and walked where you wanted. But when you will be old, you shall stretch forth your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you would not go. This spoke he, signifying of what death he should glorify God. The crucifixion of Peter upside down. which is strange. Don't you think it's a little strange that the book of Acts at chapter 15, right at the moment Peter is lukewarm about the law of Moses, right at the moment where Peter's like, you know what, we don't have to really follow it too much. Let's not bother the Gentile converts with the Torah. Let's just give them 4 commandments. Right after Acts 15, the story is no longer about the disciples. Now it's the story about Saul of Tarsus. All right. All of a sudden, the story, 15 chapters, is talking about Peter, James, John. All these guys are working together, building the Christian church. As soon as Peter says the Torah is not that big a deal, let's not worry about it, all of a sudden, Paul hijacks the story. Is there something to that? Because remember, Jesus told Peter, on this rock I will build my church. The Greek word for church, it's not like a building, it's ecclesias, which basically means on this rock I will build my movement. What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So when Peter gave Paul the right hand of fellowship, when he gave Paul his legitimacy, he essentially gave Paul the keys to the kingdom. And Paul did worse than Peter did. And that's been the issue with Christianity ever since. Peter was not a great leader, and Paul was a heretical leader to the Torah. So we must remember the law of Moses. It is not optional. Christianity is Judaism, and this has to be remembered. Jesus was a Jew. He taught the Torah. He taught the prophets. He quoted Psalms. He quoted Isaiah. He quoted Daniel. He did not say that we can break the Torah whatsoever. Had he said that, he would have been a heretic, and his death would have been valid. His death would have been worthy. But no, Jesus taught explicitly to keep the Torah, and we must remember this. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. And when he had thus spoken, he said unto him, Follow me. And Peter, turning about, seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved following, which also leaned on his breast at supper. So this is John. And said, Lord, which is he that betrays you? Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, Lord, and what shall this man do? Because Peter knows he's the leader, but he also knows that John is the favorite. So Peter's the leader. Why is he the leader? Because Jesus gave him the authority when Peter recognized him as the Christ. He said, Who do you think I am? And then they said, Some think Elijah or one of the old prophets. And he says, Who do you think I am? And Peter says, You are the Christ, the Son of God. He told them, Keep quiet about this. It's not time yet for me to suffer. So because Peter correctly identified him as the Messiah, he was given the keys to the throne. Unfortunately, Peter was not a great leader. He was soft on the Torah. Christ was a hardliner about the Torah. Moses was a hardliner about the Torah. All of the prophets were hardliners. Peter, yeah, what could be said about Peter? He's flesh like everybody else, and he loved Jesus. He loved Jesus. Was he obedient to Jesus? He could have been more obedient. That's for sure. So, and what shall this man do? Talking about John. Jesus said unto him, If I will that he tarry, meaning wait, remain. If I will that he waits here till I come, what is that to you? Follow you me. And then this saying went abroad among the brethren, that disciple should not die. Yet Jesus said not unto him, He shall not die. But if I will that he waits until I come, what is that to you? This is the disciple which testifies of these things and wrote these things, and we know his testimony to be true. There are also many other things which Jesus did, the which, if they could be written, every one, I suppose that even the world could not contain the works that should be written. Amen. This is how John chapter 21 ends. Peter says, okay, and what about John? What's he going to do? I'm the leader of the movement, but why are you so, what's your place for him? I know he's your favorite. And Jesus said, if I will that he waits here until I return, what is that to you? Follow me. And all of a sudden, the disciples, there's a rumor going around, John's not going to die. John's not going to die. He didn't say John wouldn't die. He said, if I wish that he waits here until I return, what is that to you? So maybe John died, and maybe he rose from the grave. Because they didn't find any bones, did they? Jesus said, some here... Actually, no, because Jesus said... I didn't save it, though. But Jesus did say, there are some here who will not taste death. I'm going to make sure. I'm going to Google it. I want to make sure 100% before I'm going to put it in the comments. I'm going to put that quote in the comments. But I remember Jesus said there are some here who will not taste death until they see the second coming. So, where's the body of John? Where is the body of John? How do you survive boiling oil? Huh? All the disciples were dead. All the disciples were dead. Every single one of them was killed by the Romans or the Jews. One of them survived, John. No body, no idea when he died, no idea where he died, empty tomb, a story from about 100-something years after it happened that it seems like it's common knowledge at the time by Tertullian, who just casually says, oh yeah, he was boiled alive in oil, but nothing happened to him, and then he was exiled to Patmos. It's incredible. It's incredible. Use your logic, okay? Atheists, agnostics, pagans, Muslims, whatever. Use your logic. Where is John's body? We know they killed Jesus. We know they killed all the disciples. We know there was a story going around early on in Christianity that Jesus rose from the grave. We know that his tomb was never considered like a very special place because like, oh, his body's not even there. He left. He walked out of the tomb. So we know Peter died. We know James died. We know Bartholomew. We know every single disciple and the Messiah was murdered. Where's John? Shabbat shalom, people. God bless.